Okay, very good evening. So today's sharing is on shifting palace, as per the request by one of you. The shifting palace concept of Bazi, of course, requires you to be very good in your 10 gods. You need to be very good in the analysis of the 10 gods because what you need from these 10 gods, of course, is you would require very strong understanding of how one element reacts to the other. Okay, so I've also shared with you the version 5, what you see on your screen, the version 5 of the 10 gods of this Apache annual review. It is still manual. That means you have to still move around. There were some errors, so I've just corrected it. Okay, so first and foremost, you have your elements, and I hope you can just navigate around. So the purple colored shaded areas are things you can move around, which is to identify what is the reading. And then, of course, got to know the male or female. The male or female here is mainly for the relationships because other than relationships, all the other 10 gods remains the same. Okay, so in the first part, as to recap into what we have done, first you plot the chart of a person. So as you plot the chart of a person, then you plot to the luck pillar and to the current year. Then this will be the reading that you can have for the year. So do bear in mind that this file that you have is meant for an annual review. It's an annual review. It is still manual in the sense that you have to change the elements one by one. Now, changing elements one by one is a bit tedious because people would just prefer to key in the birth date and the hour, and voila, they have their plot, they have their natal chart plotted. So if you have to do it one by one, it's pretty much painful. But for today, for today's shifting palace, this manual chart will be useful. What do we mean by shifting palace? And what is the purpose of shifting palace? Now, usually, later on, I will put a caveat that shifting palace, in my own observation, is not super accurate. It's not fully reliable because the interpretation has to be done very carefully. So the idea of a shifting palace is more for people that you have not met. Because if you know a person's chart, then please plot the chart. Straightforward. But now the question is, traditionally in the earlier days, when many more orphans or people are being adopted, then the purpose of the shifting palace is to locate the biological mother or father. But of course, in today's more recent world, it is used by many young people to form a prediction about their future husband or future wife. So therefore, more so it is used to look into spouses. So therefore, that's why in today's most likely done is about how the person's prospective spouses will look like. So this normally asks one question. How will my future wife be like? How will my future husband be like? That is mostly the kind of question that we tend to ask. Okay, so to do so, here, number one, we have, we begin, of course, with the natal chart of the person that we are referring to. And so here, we take a chart which is a female chart. So this is a Yewood Day Master female. And the year is Sin metal, which is yin as well. Now, just a reminder from what we have done last week, will this person have a forward luck cycle or reverse luck cycle? Could you recall what we have done last week? What do you think? Forward or reverse luck cycle? This person would have a forward luck cycle because yin and yin. So therefore, female facing a yin year will then have a luck cycle. And so since the cycle is a horse, what will her first luck pillar be? What will her first luck pillar be? If that is a horse. So therefore here we will find that it would be a Yewood and a good, Yi Wei. Therefore, that's where we begin to look at it. And Yi Wei is actually the day master itself. Therefore, the very first luck pillar is a Fu Yin, is a Fu Yin to her. So therefore, she would expect to have some experience during her first luck pillar itself, which is adverse or negative. Hope you can see that straight away, yeah, as it is. Right, so here she is a Yiwood day master. Again, we look into the season that she's born. She's born in the horse, which is the peak of summer. So a wood person born in summer is one that is weak, one that is weak. And then the question is there rooting? Do you find her being rooted? Therefore, she is rooted on the self. Therefore, at least but season explains 80%. Season is 80% of the explanatory power. So therefore, this means that she's weak. She's weak. Rooting just support it a bit, especially when a weekday master is being rooted. Then there is a bit of an increased chance of survival. So she's a weekday master, but she's a survivor. Right now, the next thing that we look for, of course, is her structure. To look at the structure, we look into the month, the main energy of the month. It becomes complicated when it is a graveyard branch. So if it's a graveyard branch, which means what? A dog, a dragon, a goat, or an ox. Therefore, an earth, so-called branch, would then be a bit more difficult to see. But if it is other than that, like a cardinal star, then this is easy. So horse being a cardinal star makes it very easy. She is definitely a Ting fire EG. So her structure is EG. Therefore, that would be number one. Her structure is an eating god. So this creates the kind of personality, the kind of profile that we understand by looking to this chart. What is her structure? So first of all, we look at the season to grade the strength of the day master. Then we look into her structure. That means her main characteristics, her main behavior internally. Because these are all hidden stems. Hidden, no? And these hidden stems will only be revealed later or only through her people that are close to her. Now, while on the other part, we now look into the fasa. The fasa represents what do people notice from her external. So fasa will be on this particular year step. So the year step represents her outward appearance, represents what she would normally, what people would see on the outside. And this fasa, of course, will be sin metal, and sin metal will be a 7 killing fasa that she has. Now, for those who later, of course, begins to delve into, maybe in future sharings, we will discuss the interactions of the 10 gods. There is an eating god controlling 7 killing. Because as you know, Ting Fire controls sin metal. So eating god controlling 7K is a particular good signal to have, but also a matter that 7 killing and eating god is contradictory. So therefore, this day master would have some internal trouble. The trouble is that how the world sees her and how she truly is are two different characters. So at least that would be how we can look into the facade, look into the structure, and see how it interacts. So at the end of the day, these are the three key things that we also consider. How do people look at you, how you truly are, and what is also your day master. All right, so at least these are the things that we can get by looking into the natal chart of this particular person. Right, and so now, by using the shifting palace, if this person now comes to you and ask. But usually, of course, when a person asks this question, we would expect this person to be single, this person to not have anyone in mind. Because remember, shifting palace is not, I would say, the most superior method to use, not the best, but it is a method nonetheless. Okay, so now this person comes to you and say, will I get married? When will I get married? Or how will my future prospective husband be like as it is? But once again, it is not just meant to look into your potential spouse. It is meant to look for people that you don't know. Of course, it can be a case whereby, but today is quite rare. Today, maybe we don't have civil war anymore. The warring period, World War II. We don't have the case where I've never seen my brother before. I was born an orphan. You can. Oh, there are definitely cases of this still going on, but perhaps you don't get a chance to meet too many of them. In today's more stabilized. So anyway, this person comes to say, I say, all right, I want to look for. I'm curious into finding out how will I have a match. And so in the first part, we look into the understanding that for a particular female, what would be the star representing, what would be the 10 gods representing the spouse of a female? The spouse of the female is direct officer. So the direct officer direct officer represents the spouse of a female. Even for same-sex relationship, even for two females having affinity with one another, still we look for the officer in that way. Now, what would be the spouse of a male then? The spouse for a male would then be your direct wealth, the direct wealth, which is DW. The direct wealth and D0. I think so, one or two of you may want to have some symbols that is being used. Yeah, so male will be direct wealth. All right. And so now the question is that this is a female on hand. Another question is what is the element that represents direct officer to a E would what would be the direct officer to a Yi would be the Keng metal. The Keng metal. Okay, so do we find Keng metal? So the first part here, as we explore the chart, there is no Keng metal to be found. So there is no husband star. There is no husband to be found. To be found. So that's one. No husband found. But there is a boyfriend star. Or in fact, there are three boyfriend stars. What would represents the boyfriend star to a female? What represents the boyfriend star to 17?
Seven killing.
Seven killing. Got it right now. So seven killing would be the boyfriend. So in the sense that you can say that in the first part, she has no affinity with a husband, but she has affinity with boyfriends. Therefore, a better, more suitable form of relationship will be one that is casual or informal. Therefore, that would be, she has no affinity. So the affinity would be in the form of a metal luck pillar. So when a metal luck pillar comes, or when there's metal in the chart, then this is one of the three ways to find love, to find the ability to form a relationship. So therefore, this would be it. So we can say that she is going to be, and this boyfriend will be protruding. So this is called protruding. So protruding means the seven killing appears on the stems, therefore for the world to see, for the world to see. Therefore, this would be the case of the husband, the boyfriend appearing for the world to C. 7K. All right, so that's one part we can consider. So no affinity to the husband, but she has boyfriend stars all over. That's one thing for sure. All right, now to the next part of the reading. Before we move on to the chart, the spouse pillar. I know here maybe I would like to share a bit that there is a school of thought, or even Ming's schools of thought, talks about spouse pillar being here. They do refer to, there are references to the spouse pillar being here. More so for female, more so for female. But there is, of course, another school that subscribe to the spouse pillar being here. Now, whether they are here, let's put it this way. Sometimes this pillar is called your career pillar. And so in the ancient days, of course, when women have no civil right to vote or even to work or even to own properties, uh, uh, marriage is her career. Her work is her career. And therefore, that's where one can consider that the career pillar represents the marriage pillar, because that is your job as a woman in that sense. Right? So in that sense. But anyway, I think newer school of thought prefer to put it within the day pillar, representing that husband and wife are one. That means this is truly your inner self. But if we just look into the spouse pillar here, which is represented by the day master on the branch, then we are looking at, so without using the shifting palace, we are looking at a husband or a person that carries the characteristics of friend, of indirect wealth, and e.g. So therefore, this person has the husband is like the spouse that has an e.g. characteristics, indirect wealth, and friend. So one can perhaps look at it from that point of view as well. So anyway, this would be just other ways of looking into the characteristics that the potential spouse would have. And now, to look into the shifting palace, what you need to do, of course, here is to now replace the day master with the the character that represents the person. So here in my particular chart, so to speak. So if I were to just shift this out for a while, and then I will I will just bring it here. So just bring it to this chart. So we are referring to a female that, if you just remember, look at the chart, she is actually a pink sheep, and then her day master is wait, this will then be Chia and horse. And this would be the case of she's a sin, she's a sin code. So she's sorry, so a little bit too small. Okay, therefore this is day master. So this is a day master, and so now what is good? What is good in this particular chart? Even though manual is cumbersome, but now all you need to do is just to shift this to the male, to shifting palace. So now we're doing shifting palace. And in the shifting palace approach, we would like to look at the kind of chart that the person would have. And now for the husband, which is the direct officer, we change this to the Keng Day Master. Just this, not just this. Now, of course, we understand that by merely shifting the by merely shifting the Yi Wood to the Keng Day Master, there is a violation of the pillar. There's obviously no such pillar called Keng Wei This is a yang and a yin. We know that, but this is the exception. This is the exception in the shifting palace. The only element that changes is the day master. And now, with this Keng day master as it is, what will be? What will be the relationships with one another? What will be the relationship? So that's what we would want to now ask ourselves. And so to do so, the 10 gods will be now produced, and it will now be produced in a sense that reflects, that will reflect this perspective. Okay, so therefore that is how the so-called shifting palace method is performed. Okay, so now we'll just take it. So this file that is given to you will be very useful because you can just shift the day master. So usually no other softwares out there that make it that easy for you. I've seen so far. All right. So what happens here is that by doing that, we are looking at now a Kang day master born in the season of summer week, a structure of direct officer, and a Rockwell fasa. So therefore, we are looking into a Rockwell fasa and a direct officer, so-called. And this direct officer and Rockwell again is also a clash, as it is, also representing quite a bit of a conflicting characteristics that we can find, as it is. So far, this is also something we can try to consider. And if you would like not just the 10 gods, you can also shift to relationships. So if you shift to relationships, then we can also try to look at a few of the other kind of relationships that they have, indicating where the wife or the girlfriend or the father or the girlfriend is here, which is not the best, into one partner. So I try to consider this particular relationship. So you can switch to the relationship. Now, if you're very familiar, you don't have to do that. Want to know the indirect wealth represents the girlfriend star. And so here again, we want to find out, is there for the male, is there a direct wealth? Is there a direct wealth in the chart? Do you see direct wealth in the chart? Don't have. There is no direct wealth. So this is a strange, I wouldn't say strange, I would say that the female doesn't have a husband star on the chart, no affinity, but has boyfriends. And when we do a shifting palace to the prospective spouse, this prospective spouse, sorry, there's a direct wealth here. There's a direct wealth here in the wife star, but there's an indirect wealth which is protruded to the stem. Therefore, indirect wealth protruded to the stem, direct wealth that is hidden into one. So there's a hidden wife, but there's a protruded girlfriend or indirect wealth that is being seen to the pillars. So at least this is just trying to form a prediction or try to form what the prospective person will be expected to be. Yeah, but of course, if this is a case study and we more or less know who the person is, so let's just take a look into who this person is, then of course we'll replace it with a Kang Day Master. Then we're going to see that this person again has the facade of a Rockwell, and a direct officer has the structure. Okay, but of course, as this is now in hindsight, she actually got married. and the actual spouse. Now this is the chart of the actual spouse. So of course the actual spouse chart will now appear, and our purpose now is to consider, were we accurate? Were we, how good is this technique? How good is this technique? How effective is this technique? We want to ask. So now we will compare the forecast using the shifting palace and the actual results and the actual, so to speak. But again, I would like to look into two things. But here we take a look into the expectation. So somehow there is a little bit of the case where we expect the facade to be rock wealth and the structure to be direct officer, but it turns out that the person's structure is rock wealth and the facade is direct officer. Therefore, you can see that that turns out to be quite the appearance, or at least we do see that the profile is there, but somehow the reading appears to be inverted a bit. That means, okay, we got direct officer, we have Rockwell structure, that appears to be something that works as well. Now, the second method that we are looking at, if you can recall, the second method that I was looking at just now was to look into the spouse pillar. So I look into the original chart of this person. As we look into the original chart of this person, we will consider that the person, as we were referring to, has friend, EG, and indirect wealth. Therefore, friend, EG, and indirect as a spouse. Therefore, we have the friend, the EG, the friend, and the EG. So therefore, that's just the one that we can identify to be quite the strong relationship. All right. So therefore, this will be how the shifting palace will be able to guide the person to form an expectation about how the potential spouse. Are we clear on this? On how this is to look? Okay. So anyone has any question, you can just straight away ask now. Yeah, I'm going to look into the question that you have. Okay, but of course, we are not just looking at spouse all the time. Shifting palace is not something just for spouse, it is for all the other types of relationships. And so the relationships you may want to consider are embedded into it, whether we're looking into the sun or whether you're looking into it as well. Now, coming back to the female, coming back to the Yi Wood female, what would be the sun of a Yi Wood female? So the children of a female are her output, eating god and hurting officer. So what would be the eating god for a Yi Wood day master? What is the eating god for a Yi Wood day master? The eating god for a Yi Wood produces what? Produces Ting day master. Produces a Ting day master. And therefore this would be how we can consider Yi Wood day master sun, and then we shift this to the male. Then we switch this to the. Therefore, now we are using the shifting palace to now look at the sun. Look at the sun. Or if she has any daughter, then we'll look into the shifting palace for the daughter, and the daughter would then be female. So we change the nature, we change the gender, male and female, and then we shift it to the person to be able to determine how this relationship works for each of them, the relationship. Therefore, this would be just looking into the relationship between the sister, the daughter, the mother, and whether one is closer to, for example, this lady appears to be closer to her brother closer to her brother. Yeah, that's it. Very good, huh? Jenny, huh? In a way. Okay, so shifting palace is not just about spouse, but it's about any other relationship that you can try to figure out. That means what kind of profile will my son be? What kind of profile will I get for my daughter? These are the questions that one can also look at. Huh? Okay, now let's continue to this part as we explore into yet another one. But I want to consider that after using this method for some time, I have not found this to have strong empirical correlation. So meaning to say that I don't find this method to be extremely useful or very good, because there are times simply because this method is used when we lack the person's proper chart. Because if there is already a person that is of interest, then straight away plot the person's chart. So I normally consider that this shifting balance is not something you should explore a lot. It would be just try to take it with a bit of a caution. And of course, if there's no other better method, then you can then use this method. Yeah, if you do have other method, then go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so if you're interested, or I think you have already more or less figured out, the person that we have just looked for was actually Princess Diana. So I'm sure you recall Princess Diana. Diana, uh, the former wife of King Charles, the third now that we have. Okay, so that was the chart that you saw, the chart that you saw in her. Yeah, therefore, here her first luck pillar was a full yin. Her first luck pillar was a full yin itself, because to the day master, this is she is a Yi day master, and the first chart is full yin. And of course, in my chart, the colors represents the energy level, and the energy level was tremendously very low at when she was 8 years old. And of course, by looking into her life, her parents were divorced in that year. That was the year her parents divorced. And looking into the luck pillar, as she moved from a luck pillar of fire to metal, to the metal luck. And to a metal luck pillar, of course, in traditional part, we normally consider that her useful, her Yongshen, in the heat of summer, hot summer will need water to cool down. Therefore, the Yongshen is Gui water. Gui water would be needed to cool the weather down. And of course, with the Ting fire, it would be good to have a hurting officer, Ping fire here to be her Yongshen. So all in all, that would be, and we can see that Teng metal is absent from her chart. Her chart does not have any Keng metal at all. And of course, the metal luck pillar appears. The metal luck. And metal direct officer represents her husband. Represents her husband. So her husband appears at this particular luck pillar. Especially in the year of the Keng. Especially in the year of the Keng Shen. This was the year that she met Prince Charles. So she met her future husband at the time in the year of the Keng. In the year of the Keng. Right. But of course, metal is not favorable to her, as she is a weekday master. So anyway, that doesn't appears to be quite a favorable element to look at as this. But anyway, nonetheless, I think as we would know her life, she met her tragic death when she has reached to 1990, when was it? 1997. So therefore, this was where she met in a car accident in the year of the Ting Chu. Before that, into it as well. All right, there is a question, of course, in the chart. What is the percentage of accuracy I would give this? I would have to say sometimes shifting palace less than 50%. Less than 50%. Uh, More often than not, because sometimes when I use the shifting palace method, I would ask a few questions first, try to get it, and it is not to say it is not to say that sometimes it doesn't work precisely. But having said that, it could also be at times where people do not make the right decision. When they don't make the right decision, it could be somehow something that doesn't. Uh, I mean, if the person didn't choose the correct spouse, then therefore that might also be the case where the person might not get it correct. We take a look into another example. That's what I meant. Let's take a look into another example. We have a female, again a female, a Wu Earth female. So now let's take a look into this chart. Wu Earth female with an eating god structure and a direct resource structure. Direct resource controls. Ting fire controls the Keng, controls the EJ. This person will be very determined, very self-disciplined. Very good. Who Earth born in the autumn is weak, day master. But is this Wu Earth rooted? This Wu Earth is pretty much rooted, supported, and producing element, sitting on resource. This person is not very weak. This, even though born out of season, the person sits on resource, sitting on resource. So sitting on resource makes this quite a strong chart. Makes this quite a strong chart into the area. I'll answer your question later, Vicky. Just in a while more. Normally, shifting parallel is not used for business. It's used for relationship. Because when you have a shifting palace, you are changing it to a person or to another element. Your business doesn't really have much of an element to look at, as it is. Okay, so anyway, what would be the husband to a Wu Earth? The husband to a Wu Earth is a direct officer, and that would have to be what? That would have to be Yi Wood, isn't it? Okay, but the thing is that, is there any husband star? Do you see any husband star? Is there any direct officer that you have seen? Don't have, Therefore, don't have. Don't have. Sometimes we don't have not much of an affinity, as it is. Secondly, we look into the husband star. Now we can see that in this part, there's a rock wealth and there is a direct resource. Rock wealth and direct resource. So that would be the facade of one of the methods to look into the prospective spouse that we. Okay, so as we once again replace the day stamp and we replace it with this, once we replace it with this, what do we get? We get an EG, eating god structure, and also the direct officer structure to the facade. And so therefore this becomes the forecast. It becomes the forecast. And in the forecast star, as we look into the structure, we can then see that the forecast husband will have a direct wealth, two direct wealth that is here in outside and into the career. But then later, further down the road, an indirect wealth that comes in, so to speak, but not in the wealth. So usually one of the more favorable uh, method that we want to one of the most favorable sign is to have the spouse in the correct palace to indicate a very long prosperous marriage. Okay, but now as we look into the forecast, we contrast this to the actual result. So this is now the actual result, the actual husband that we have, the actual husband. And when we can contrast here, this is where we find that this would be the actual person we have, and the actual husband and actual man, of course, will have indirect wealth for the husband, but do find that direct wealth is lacking into a certain degree. Therefore, that would be the one part that number one, we do not show that there is a lot that there is any accuracy that you can find. So no, so this doesn't look like there is any accurate or any sharp way of predicting the particular actual person. So that means if we applied the shifting palace, we would not get the reading correct. We wouldn't get the reading correct. We will find that the reading structure turns out to be quite. But even though if it is, even though there's a little bit of maybe a little bit of characteristics that are not too far off. One is an indirect resource, one is an eating god. These two are quite introverted kind of character of behavior as well. So if you just describe general, you'll find yourself getting quite close to that. But actually, other than that, you don't find that the actual results is in any way close to the one that's in focus. So that's true. Right, so therefore that would be the use of the shifting palace method that occasionally we do see that it has its usefulness. It is used to more, normally it is used to compare. I would say that it is used to compare, to do two things perhaps, to compare using the shifting palace forecast against the actual. And if the actual natal chart does not conform to the forecast, it could mean, or it could be that perhaps this person may not be the best. This method may not be necessarily the better part. And furthermore, in another analysis that was done earlier, to know that these females rock wealth goat blade of all the 60 elements, of all the 60 pillars, the worst pillar to be associated for a earth horse day master is the chi is the chi is the chi what is the chi wei is the chi wei, and the chi wei is here. And definitely the Rockwell goat blade is in the same group. Therefore, there will be affinity. And Rockwell goat blade is the kind of an attraction that I normally consider to be what we call fatal attraction. There will be attraction. There will be strong affinity to work with this kind of people. But the outcome of this will only be fatal. Will only end up being unfavorable at the end of the day. So, of all the elements, the person to avoid is rock, well, good blade. will always be in this particular. That's what we always say. Always do that. So in the case, let's say for example, for Princess Diana, the Rockwell blade is this element here, and so Jia Chen. So of all the 60 types of all the 60 types of elements, of all the 60 pillars that there are, the pillar that Princess Diana must avoid at all costs is the pillar that is Jia. Of course, there will be affinity towards these people, but do not marry them, do not go out with them, do not join venture with them, do not do any business with them. They can still be your friends, they can still be close associates, but no partnership, no joint venture, no working together. That would be the requirement. That means we always would have that as well. All right, so this would be about the shifting palace method that we have. It's also about what we can do to do a bit of a recap into the luck pillar and also getting a bit more about the relationship, understanding the relationship of the 60 pillars. All right, so that's it for today for a very quick sharing. And if there are any other questions, anything else, let me know. Not then this will be the wrap up for the day. Yeah.